everybody? Can you all hear me? Can you see me? Yes, you're writing. Hello, everybody. Okay, yes, I know some of you. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Okay. I can see people and I remember people from different parts of the country. Welcome, everybody. Well, another meeting, another webinar. Hello from Punta del Este. Wow, I envy you. Nicely, though. Okay, nice to hear from you. Nice to see. Oh, from Posadas. Hello, hello, everybody. Mercedes San Luis, Chubut. Excellent. It's lovely to see you all. Great people. Today we have a longer session, I think, I'm afraid, because I would very much like you to participate with me. It's a little bit more practical. Quilmes, Córdoba, great. Thank you, everybody, once again. Well, it's SEN, again, special educational needs, but this time a little bit more practical. And I go on. Hi, Marcela Varas from Salta, from another teacher from Jujuy, Don Bosco. Excellent, great. So, SEN, time to go practical. Again, special educational needs. And what do you remember? And if you haven't attended my other seminars, what do you know about SEN? What does it include? What does it involve? Madrina Avellaneda, I go on reading, okay? I seem to be Mirta Legrand today. Okay, what does SEN mean to you? Okay. Some people can hear a lot of background noises. I guess this has to do with your connection. There's no noise here at all, but okay. I ask again, what do you think SEN involves? What does it imply? What comes to your mind when I say SEN? Special educational needs, yes, okay, but when I say SEN includes absolutely everything. It means different kinds of difficulties, okay? Difficulties that may be physical, like a child who cannot see properly. It may be psychological needs or even psychiatric needs. The important thing is that we are teachers of English. We are not in the classroom to diagnose. We are not in the classroom to label students. We don't have the knowledge for that. And very often we do receive diagnosis from professionals. The point is that very often those professionals give us advice or suggestions, and the suggestions are so broad that they mean very little. Like, the child needs more personal attention. And in practical terms, how can I manage if I've got 30? Or the child needs or has difficulty reading, or the child is dyslexic and needs one activity at a time, for example. All these things are too general for us teachers of English. When we have a book, a workbook, final exams, we have to give them marks, okay? So we are going to walk slowly through all the different aspects that SEN implies. On the one hand, it may be physical, psychological, or psychiatric, and we are not there to label students. We are there to work with students. We are there to teach English and to help them learn English as well as they can. And they will all be able to learn at different speeds in different ways. Also, on the other hand, there are many other variables that come to play, like, for example, teaching strategies. How should I teach? And when I say teaching, I mean all the stages. What happens when I present new material? How can I practice the material I have taught? What about assessment? Teaching strategies. Also, professional development, because many teachers say, well, I haven't been trained to teach this reality. Well, actually, if we have or we haven't, we have to go on investigating and we have to go on learning how to teach, because after all, each child is unique. Each child is a different world altogether. Each child has got very specific needs. So those of you who have had SEN at your training colleges, actually, probably it was very theoretical. So anyway, if you have or if you haven't been specifically trained for this, you have to go on investigating. Then there's the family commitments. And here, well, we have serious problems because very often when you call parents in, those parents who need to come don't. Very often, if they do come, they tell lies. Very often they say, well, at home, he's okay. At home, I don't see any problems. And we have problems in the classroom. Or the opposite, they say, well, I've got the same problem at home. I don't know what to do with him. You solve your problem at school. I'll deal with him at home. And that doesn't help. And then there's a family and school link that becomes essential, and we have to build this connection. If it doesn't exist, we have to work like ants, very slowly and every day and gradually to get some kind of rapport. And here I've got comments. When families do not cooperate, our job becomes very hard, definitely. But I've got like a motto, I always say the classroom is yours. What happens within those four walls is yours. And we can always, always improve a little bit, change a little bit. If we manage to change that little bit, then we are done. Then it's great. And then going back to the picture that you can see to your slide, there's bullying. Fortunately, this is changing a little bit because we are speaking about Zen openly, and because we can make students aware of different needs, of special needs, so we can talk it over and openly. However, there is bullying, and bullies are students. This is food for thought, and this is for another seminar, okay? But basically, I will say that bullies become bullies because they suffer bullying, very often at home, and bullies choose their victims. This doesn't happen just by chance, and we teachers must activate all the possible mechanisms to stop this bullying, to make it open, so that the bully becomes aware that we know what he or she is doing. But okay, let's go on. I told you that Zen includes different kinds of difficulties: physical, psychological, psychiatric. We cannot possibly deal with all of them in just 1 hour or 50 minutes, okay? Hello from Lima. Lovely to see you again. Cynthia, welcome. Okay, so I have chosen for this session and for my previous sessions to focus on 3 because they are the 3 that are most frequent in Argentina, okay? So it's ADD, dyslexia, and autistic syndrome. We have worked on these and we have talked about these, and we know that when you have children who are inattentive, forget about the names and the labels. We've got children who are inattentive. We've got children who find it hard to read and write. And we've got children who have communication issues, basically that. Then we need to accommodate, we need to adjust our material. And when I say we need to adjust, we need to accommodate, this means throughout the teaching process. It's not that today, because I've got time, I'm going to plan one specific activity for Peter. It's Peter needs special activities regularly. So I need to sit down and focus and try to work harder. Unfortunately, for the same money, probably it's like that. Yes, you need to adapt the students' needs and interests. I need to adapt my activities to their needs and interests. But that is like general. Now, these children are special in some way. So I have to bear in mind that I have to make adjustments in every single stage of my teaching process, in the presentation, in the practice, and of course in the assessment, definitely. And when we talk about special needs, we talk about scaffolding the learning process, like going slowly, part by part, step by step, to guide them, to help them, okay? Because these children have got some kind of barrier. The barrier may be physical, the barrier may be psychological, okay? And of course, these difficulties, the ones that I'm dealing with now, are not cured. It's not that I give them a medicine, a magic pill, and the child gets cured. These are forever. So if I have a primary school student who is dyslexic, he will go on being dyslexic. This is why it's important to work together with all the other teachers in the institution. So we speak about compensation, not about cure. And this is why one child may be more or less okay today and a disaster tomorrow. Maybe what he does one exercise well today and tomorrow a very similar exercise is a failure. Okay, we have to be patient and bear this in mind. Now, a very important difference is this. We speak about accommodations and modifications, and they are not the same. Here in this webinar, we're going to focus on accommodations because accommodations don't affect the grades. Accommodations have to do with how, not with what. Accommodations help the child. Yes, yes. Accommodations help the child remove the barriers. I remove or I help, or I try to remove the barriers for the students to learn better. Accommodations change the way they learn, not what they learn. The main objective, the linguistic and the general output will be the same. While when I speak about modifications, I'm speaking about changing the content. And if I change the content, I'm going to change all the performance expectations. I know when I need modifications, I'm speaking about more serious difficulties. I'm very often speaking about a diagnosis that has been made and I've got a certificate for that. I need to ask for special permission from the authorities. This is why we're going to focus on accommodations, which are very simple strategies. Okay? Up to here, any questions? Okay. All right. So I go on. Okay, fine. Maru, hello. How are you? Such a long time. Good. Okay. So we move on to the different kinds of accommodations. And they're very simple. We've got accommodations that have to do with presentation, with setting, with response, organization, and timing. And the name tells you a lot. If I speak about a presentation accommodation, here presentation doesn't refer to the stage in the unit. It doesn't refer to the moment when I present new material, okay? A presentation accommodation has to do with the way I present material to the student. And it has to do, for example, with more listening than reading, if the child has got, or if I have some children who have reading difficulties. Presentation has to do with using a larger photocopy. Presentation has to do, very good, Daniela, presentation has to do with including more visual aids. Presentation has to do with including, for a test, including visual reminders of, for example, a verb structure or an S. Presentation has to do with using a larger font. It has to do with, yes, or realia. It has to do with the way you present the material to the child, the way you give. It doesn't matter if it's presentation, practice, or evaluation. Okay, it means the way you show the material to the child. Setting accommodations refer to the environment. Setting has to do with, for example, in the case of autistic children, they need a more relaxed atmosphere, a quieter atmosphere. So if you're going to have a test and you have children with those difficulties, maybe you can offer them another special room, a quieter room. Setting may be the desk where the child is seated. Setting is, hello Natalia, welcome. Setting is, for example, if I invite a stronger student to work with him, and so I make him sit by the student who has difficulties. And setting also is if I allow the child to have what he needs. Like, for example, there are children, especially autistic children, who need like a transitional object in their hands. Very often it's an old toy or part of a toy. Or there are children who are very fidgety and inattentive, and they need some kind of elastic band either on their wrist or around, looped around the chair so that they can move and play and kick that elastic band. If I allow those tools, then I am changing the setting. I am accommodating the setting to fit that child's needs. When I speak about timing accommodation, of course, it has to do with the amount of time. And we all know, yes, yes, Anna Belen, it means to adjust your workplace for the student. Right, you're right, very good. When I speak about timing, yes, it has to do with the amount of time, but also it means the amount of time that I devote to the activities. Like, for example, if I know I have children who have reading difficulty, I'm going to devote more time to the speaking part, to the oral part, than to reading, at least with those students, okay? But timing also means give more time to solve an activity, yes. Give each student the time they need to do the activity, yes, you're right. And timing has to do with planning, especially when you have a test. If you know you've got a child who needs more time, well, you have to cater for that. You can't say, well, it's break time, I have to stop. It's break time, and that you cannot change, but then you have to change the plan. Maybe you have to offer the chance to finish the test some other time, okay? Timing also means that there are children who, especially those who are kinesthetic, and sometimes children who are autistic, very often they have like crises or attacks, and they need to go out for a while. They need more frequent breaks. And if you know that, then you have to cater for that. But first you have to get to know that. And you get to know it through very careful observation. I always say that the best tool we have as teachers is our careful observation, detail, okay? The way the child moves, the way his eyes move, his facial expression. That is going to teach me when the child needs a break, when the child does not understand. Well, that is timing. But timing is more than just the time they need, okay? The next type of accommodation is response. Response has to do with the answers they give, okay? And we have to cater for that too. If they're going to take ages to write just one answer, I have to facilitate the learning and the response. How? Maybe I can give them the beginning of the answer. Maybe I can transform the question into a multiple choice thing. Maybe I can have another student to write what the child with difficulty dictates. The important thing is that all these alternatives we may use them at different moments. It's not that only one works, it's all of them work. So we have to use them every now and then, all right? And the last kind of accommodation is organization. There are even children who have just organization difficulties. They're not dyslexic, they are not ADD, they've got organization issues, and it's almost a pathology. So we have to teach them. Organization accommodations mean, well, precisely that. Yes, it's essential, Maria Fernanda, you're right. But it's the most difficult part because we take so many things for granted. It means, for example, what materials will I ask them to have on the desk before I start working? It means, for example, teaching them to actually write in the books. Children in Argentina don't usually write in books. Well, these children need to write in the book. So we have to teach them that they can use highlighters. We have to teach them that they can underline in different colors. We have to teach them that they can actually write there. Organization also is connected to timing, and very often we have to teach them to manage the time. And we can do that by having a big and clear clock on one of the walls and saying, well, you've got 5 minutes. When the hand gets to number 5, your time will be up. All this is organization. And of course, it has to be planned. But to plan, you have to get to know each child. And of course, the $1 million question is, how can I if I've got 30? That's the main task. I think that is the great difference between an effective teacher and just a teacher. I mean, you can teach all the grammar you like. You may be perfect in terms of language, but only the teacher who does get all the details is the one who will eventually become effective. So now you've had enough theory. Of course, here Maria Laura says that it's important that the teacher also has to be organized, of course. And it's a good point, Maria Laura, because you know that all these, not pathologies, all these difficulties, we may also have them. There are teachers who've got reading trouble. There are teachers who are a bit hyperactive. There are teachers who may be inattentive. So the good thing again is self-observation, because if I know my problem, I can then try to solve it. If I am unaware or I am like not modest enough to admit, then it's more difficult. Okay, but of course, I can only give advice on how to get organized if I am a little bit organized. Otherwise, I will not be aware. All right. Yes, Melissa says that having heads or coordinators observe the class may help a lot. Definitely, yes. Or another colleague. Yes, that's also important. Very good, a very good comment. Now, practical. Let's go practical. This is a presentation in first grade, okay? It's for first grade in Argentina. This is why you've got block capital letters. No word has been written in the activities, just instructions, okay? So do you think that Andrea from Bahia Blanca, okay, Andrea, welcome, right. So going back to this, do you think that children with difficulties, we speak about difficulties in general, and there may be children who have difficulty reading, who need to move a bit more, who may have communication trouble. But in general, do you think that children with difficulty can cope with an activity like this? Let's focus on the first page, okay? Page number 3. Well, it's not page 3. It's the first page, the one on the left. Do you think they can cope? Absolutely, says Natalia. Visually, it may be a bit too much for some kids. I love the differences. Yes, okay, yes. All right, definitely. Okay. The first page has only got one big picture, and it hasn't got anything, it hasn't got any words written. So in general, most children can cope with it. Yes, I agree with you. However, when I say cope, I have to define my terms, because visually there's not too much. It's okay. It doesn't attack the child visually. But as a teacher, I expect that they will learn this. I want them to learn this vocabulary, and there are 8 words. If I just want the children to learn the words orally without any writing, it's okay. They may learn the words. They may take longer or shorter time. They may need more practice. But in general, after this, we sing a song. After this, we play with cards. We do oral work, and they will internalize the words orally. Now, if, although there are no written words here, I want them to write, that will be, as English people say, a horse with another color. That will be completely different. And of course, I have to show them, and this is what we do on the next page, different kinds of family members, because there are different kinds of families, and we have to include this. So ideally, we have to ask them to bring their own photos. Physical photos or photos in their cell phones? The cell phone is here to stay. I know that many schools don't allow cell phones in the classrooms, but it's always good to ask the children to take photos of certain things, routines, what they did yesterday, food, whatever you are teaching, and to bring the photos and to use their personal cell phones. If you don't want all the class to bring the cell phones, nominate students and say, tomorrow Peter and Tommy will bring their cell phones with photos and they will share. Okay, but if you're going to teach, going back to this, if you're going to teach them to write these words, they will need a lot, but a lot of very hard work, because 8 is quite a number and they will not find it easy at all. You will need, for example, these things. You will need to write, and remember that these children need multisensorial learning. So this means involving all the senses. Pictures, yes. Flashcards, yes. Drawings on the board, drawings on sheets of paper, yes. But then they will also need to feel the words somehow. So maybe they write on salt, maybe they write on sand, maybe they write using Play-Doh. They need to touch something and associate that something with letters. Then, of course, they may cut out letters and put them back into words, okay? Also, as you teach little children to write, they will need, and here I go to the home connection, home commitment. Children with difficulty will need more practice than children who don't have any difficulty. So, we have to insist. We have to call parents in. We have to explain what we are doing and why. Maybe they will not do anything. Maybe they are not willing to help, but at least we have to try. And of course, I'm not going to give the child 100 pages to fill in. I'm going to give them very simple activities for them to work at the word level. Very often the problem is at the word level. So you can, for example, show them pictures, similar to the ones in the book. Maybe you can get photocopies of those same pictures, but then away from the book and different grandmothers, for example, or different sisters or different baby brothers, so that they can identify the word. Then you can ask them to complete with just one letter, gradually a little bit more complicated, because the brain, in order to make sentences, after working at the word level, you have to work at a sentence level or phrase level. So for that, you need more organization, more classification. So you have to do things like this, the rectangle in red, where you've got different lexical sets, and they have to classify. They have to put all the animals together and all the family members together, for example. It may be in sets, or it may even be words that you cut out and they go into bags. You may go more physical, okay? The more physical, the better. Something like this, something like classifying. If you think about a box or a bag to put the words that correspond to that, yes, it may become a game. And games are okay. Now, remember that when you plan, again, I go to your initial observation, the game will affect students in different ways. Children who are very kinesthetic will get very enthusiastic, not to say too enthusiastic, or at the game. Children who are autistic or have got some kind of communication trouble, maybe they get a little bit scared or have some kind of shock if the others start shouting or speaking loudly. So all this is what we have to consider when we plan the game and when we give the instructions. Okay, I am trying to read your comments. I've got several students with these special needs in a secondary bilingual school. Daniela says, yes, Daniela, because these things are not cured, you're likely to have them in primary, secondary, and tertiary and university level. It's very hard. At a bilingual school, it's even harder because probably they have to sit for exams. So that's another pressure that they have, okay? But it's not impossible. If you want, at the end, I will give you my WhatsApp number and we can get in touch. It's not impossible, but of course, yes, it's much more demanding for you. There are many bilingual schools that have got this issue. Don't worry. So going back to this, these are very simple activities. Now, if you do them once, you will have no result whatsoever. You have to work at this regularly and using different photographs and different strategies all the time. If you look at the rectangle at the bottom, this is like more ideal because we have taught 5 new words. Good number. And in the next exercise on the next page, we are practicing the same, but this time through different photos. And these photos just show one part of the animal. So there is association, I mean the word and the picture, but at the same time the parts and the animal. Okay? So these things work very, very well. And of course, the main disadvantage is that we have to cater for all this ourselves. Now, as children grow up, because I showed you parts of a book for primary 1 for first grade. Now, this is different. This is for children who are older. Look at the number of words. We've got 10. So 10 is like more challenging. And here we've got the written word. It's not just the picture. So here we've got another challenge. We've got a more serious problem because, I mean, it's not only remembering the 10 words, which children who are inattentive are going to find it very hard, but also they have to learn to write the words. So again, what do you think we should do? I see some of you are writing. Games are useful. Yes, of course. I will play a memory game. Right. We can mix transparent words. Okay, very good. Yes. These are very good ideas. The first thing is, okay, make them look carefully and see if there are any transparent words. Okay. Then remember one thing at a time. Remember part by part. Remember to go slowly. If you do all this, everybody is going to work better, not just the ones with difficulties. So instead of teaching 10 words altogether, if you look at exercise number 2, it says listen and say the words, then say the rap. Of course, the rap is going to help them, but we have a problem, Houston. When I say you have to teach the words, and you have, Simon says, very good. When I say you have to teach the words, and when the word is written, then I have to teach the writing, the meaning, and the pronunciation. And it's 3 things for each of these 10 words. Like, it's too much. When they say the rap, yes, they're going to remember. They're going to remember how to say the word. Are they going to remember how to write it? Are they going to remember what the word means? Not through the rap. Unless I add, like, for example, cards. And so when they say the rap, they put their hands up with the card, the picture card, and they say, for example, I like fruit salad, and they put the sign up. It's fruit salad, okay? So, yes, it has to be part by part. Never 10 words altogether. I would say 4 or 5 maximum, maybe 2 sets of 5. I teach 5. You practice 5. You play with 5. Then the other 5, and eventually the rap. And if you know the rap, the rhythm for all raps is more or less the same. So you can rap yourself with the first 4 words or the first 5 words, and then you go down. So part by part and slowly. Using mimics and gestures. Yes, of course. Yes. Of course, whatever is physical helps. The problem here is the number of words and the amount of information. When I say part by part, no, I mean, when you say, Melissa, if you say part by part, class by class, no, I mean, I've got 10 words. Honestly, first, I would teach the first 5. I would teach tomato soup, potatoes, peas, rice, and chicken. Okay? Or you may divide them any way you like, but just 5. I teach them, I practice, then maybe you add another one, and then another one, and another one, or just 5, and then 5 more. But teach, practice, play. Teach, practice, play, and then yes, you go to the wrap that you have there. And Natalia says we can stick pictures and take one out. Yes, of course, all games are great, but we have to segment. Okay, we have to work part by part, right? So let's go on. Of course, this would be the workbook for that student's book page. Mini dictionaries, picture dictionaries work a lot, and they are fine. They work well, not a lot. They work well. And they can even use, we can allow them to use a picture dictionary when they are writing a test. They help a lot, and that's very good. However, a child who has difficulty writing and reading, if they're going to complete all these words that you've got here, they're going to take ages, and the good ones are going to finish in 2 minutes. So this is something that you have to plan. Either you give the faster students extra work, or you do this. Let me switch on to this. And again, you work part by part. You get a bigger photocopy and you provide beginnings, or you give them letters to complete, and that would be different. So they are associating picture and word. They are associating meaning and word. The only thing that would be pending would be the listening part of the saying, how you say that, the pronunciation of the word. And you've got it here because it says listen and check. So there you would have the 3 parts of the word: the pronunciation, the spelling, and the meaning. Okay? But part by part. Never all together. They just won't make it. Honestly, you will not be able to do all this either if you don't plan. So this is what is challenging, that we have to plan, unfortunately. And Maria Laura says, in this way, everybody will be happy finishing together. Definitely a good point, Maria Laura, because in this way, you are not making the child with difficulty stand out in a bad way. It's everybody the same. The only thing is that they just need more time. Okay? This is what special needs is about. Now, every book at every level has got stories or has got readings. And Houston, what do I do if I've got a child who's got difficulty reading and writing? Do you think they can cope with this? Let's imagine it's 3rd or 4th grade. Do you think they can manage? I see you are writing. I'm waiting for your answers. They say, no, I agree. It's too much. Definitely. There is too much information on the page. Definitely. Information comes in different forms. Letters, pictures, color, organization, all that is information, and this is too much information. Impossible for a child with attention difficulties, for a child who cannot read or write. So what do you do? What do we do? The first thing is like this, part by part, slowly, step by step. Technically, this is scaffolding. And when you have a text, the first thing you have to do to scaffold the learning is to prepare the child for that. In every book, when you have a text, we take it for granted that you have taught some vocabulary related to it, There is some grammar that you have. There is something that the child is practicing here in the story. So first of all, I have to make them just look at the pictures in the book to identify more or less the situation, even using the mother tongue. It's not a problem. But then when I come to working on the text itself, I have to give them time. They cannot just read all the text all together. One way of scaffolding is in terms of the accommodations we saw at the beginning. I have to organize, I have to help them identify some words. So I can tell them, for example, and for me, highlighters are essential. I think that the first thing we have to tell parents is to buy 3 highlighters, any colors, like yellow, green, and pink, or yellow, green, and orange. So I can tell them, for example, in this picture, remember that before in the slide before, I taught food. Okay, this is the reading that corresponds to food. So I can tell the children to use a yellow highlighter and to highlight all the food words. So they're going to underline chicken, salad, fruit salad, carrot, the words that we have seen and practiced and played with and sung. So now, when they highlight only those words, even children who have difficulty reading can read those words aloud. Hello, Vanessa, welcome. So I can say, okay, Pedrito, can you read the first word you have underlined? And he will say tomato soup or fruit salad or whatever. But words, they can read because they've seen them 100 times. So in a way, I am practicing reading, but I am also giving the weak child the chance to participate and show that he can be more or less the same. Okay, hello, Florencia, thank you for joining us. So first, food words. Then you can, for example, tell them to circle the characters. And there you've got the family members. And you can do this part by part. So once you have worked on this and you have practiced reading aloud a few of the words they know, then I go to the story itself. So I have done the general idea through pictures, the principal words, underlining, highlighting, and reading aloud. And then, because this is too much information, I must use the digital book. I have to project on a bigger screen each frame, number 1 first and big, so that then they can follow the reading. Then number 2, big. Okay, slowly part by part. Again, it wouldn't make any sense to project the 8 frames all together. I would stop at number 4. I would check and make general comprehension questions, and then the next 4, because students who've got attention issues are just going to get lost. Okay? Okay, thank you, Melissa, for your comments. The idea is that, again, I feel that there's a lot that we can do. On the one hand, making everybody work, but on the other hand, respecting and including those children with difficulties without lowering the level, because I am making everybody work. I am using the same words. I am making them remember those words. While if I didn't do this, they wouldn't remember any of the words. Now we come to the reading comprehension questions. Before I do the questions, remember I said time was an important kind of accommodation. All right. And here it plays a very important factor. Not everybody needs the same time. So it's very important to give them time, to read silently. When the child reads aloud, especially those children with difficulties, they make a great effort to read aloud and they forget about meaning because they are making an effort to put the 2 letters together. So when I give them time to read silently, they forget about pronunciation and they focus on meaning. After that time, I go to the reading comprehension questions. I go to exercise number 3. And exercise number 3, again, it's simple because they have to circle the correct option. But the point is the amount of information on the page. There are children who will need a bigger font. And so I can have 6, but number 1 would be, for example, my example. I can make a bigger photocopy of this or type it out again, bigger on a separate sheet. And number 1 will be the example. The example will say, 1, this story is a mystery story or a modern fairy tale. And the 2 options, mystery story or fairy tale, if I were you, I would write them in a rectangle. A mystery story in one rectangle, in another rectangle, a modern fairy tale. Or a fairy tale directly to make it simpler. While in a rectangle, because these children need to focus. And the rectangle has got limits. And so the limits help you focus. So you see how you can adapt the same exercise, the same aim, the same difficulty, just changing a few things. Okay? We go on, and also, of course, you may eventually get them to act out very short parts. Make them color the right rectangle in the activity before. Very good, Celia. Yes, color, tick, underline, circle, whatever you want. Or another activity, remember this multisensorial thing. I write 4, 5, not more than 5, sentences. In this case, sentences of things the king said. And what they have to do is, first of all, cut them out and stick them in their notebook, but in the correct order. So there is reading, there is cutting, there is sticking, and there is putting in order. Order is sequence, and sequence is the basis for a narrative. So this is reading comprehension with physical things. This is very important, not just for children with difficulty, for everyone. We go on, and this is the workbook for that story. You've got questions and answers. Number 4 is exercise 1. Yes, they can do the same with pictures on the board. Yes, okay, yes. The point is, Marisol, it's a very good idea that they can do the same with pictures on the board. It's very good. The only difference is that pictures on the board, only 1 or 2 will come out to the board to put them in order. In the other way, everybody will at their own time, okay? And somebody asked me before, and I didn't have time to answer because I didn't want to interrupt, how long would this take? Of course, it takes longer. Of course, it takes much longer than just going through the book. But it's teaching. I don't want to hurry up through the book. Finishing a book, if the children don't learn anything, doesn't lead anywhere. In this way, they're going to learn, and everybody's going to learn. So it's much better to devote more time. I go back to this. You've got 4 questions. 4 is a good number, but again, the amount of information on the page. In this case, because 4 is a good number, what I would do is just cover, using any piece of paper, cover the second part. So they visually focus on the first part. They can do that. If somebody has got a lot of difficulty, then yes, I can get a bigger photocopy. I can even give them the beginnings of the answers, or I can directly tell them. For example, number 1 says, is Ed was the king. Is Ed an old king or a young king? I will tell all the students to answer using complete sentences, but the others can answer with just the content words like young king, and that will be accepted, okay? Because I'm focusing on content. Then, thank you, Celia, for your comments. Then we go to exercise number 2, and this is a very good option if we take a few things into account. It says, look and write, circle the food that is not in the story. And there are visuals, and that's very good. That is what we have to use. But first, they have to look and write. So they've got 3 words, and they have to match with the pictures. Of course, the pictures are not that clear because the idea is that they look at the color. So, for example, the pea soup would be number 2. Now, a child with difficulty may take ages to write all this. So, one solution could be to just do the first 2. Another solution would be to write letters. A for pea soup, B for carrot soup, C for tomato soup. And so what they write is just the letter or the number if it's easier. And then circling the food that is not in the story, that's easy. But part by part. So first they do the first part, you correct it orally, you write the answers on the board neatly, clearly in big letters or numbers, and then they proceed to the second part. Never 2 instructions together. Okay? And we go on, and you have this game-like activity for a revision. Yes, Gustavo, the final output is what counts, definitely. Yes, of course. And they are doing the same. They are getting to the same place in a different way. Very good. Now, this, which in theory is a kind of revision, is impossible for children with difficulty. Impossible because it's 10. Impossible because the color makes it like too much. Impossible because they are not going to follow the squares and they're going to write the letters anywhere. So we have to design it in a different way. First of all, separating the 2 activities. It's 1 activity per page in a case like this, bigger, but much bigger. And I would even cut it into 2. I would have from 1 to 5 and then from 6 to 10. And the squares have to be much bigger. And perhaps I would use colors to help them identify words. And you will see at the end why. Like, for example, if you go to number 2, it says a dessert that you can make with strawberries, cherries, and bananas. That would be fruit salad. So I would invite the children to draw a line around the first rectangle in red or any color, and a line around the other rectangle in another color for them to visually understand that they are 2 different words that make up a word. And later on, when I explain something different, you will realize why. I will come back to this later. And we come to grammar. Every book has got grammar. Children and students, older teenagers have grammar. And grammar comes in contexts. In this case, the context is theoretically short. You've got a dialogue, and a boy is skiing in Switzerland, because in Switzerland you can ski throughout the year, apparently, because there are special places where you can do that. And so this is a contrast between the present simple and the present continuous. It says I'm wearing ski clothes. I don't ski all the time, but now I'm skiing in Switzerland, or something like this. This is the first exercise, and then you quickly have the grammar charts and the think about grammar. What do you think about this? How do you feel thinking about your students when you see this? Teaching grammar is a big deal. Yes, of course, it's quite a challenge. Grammar, no content words, tenses, yes. The point is that I'm having a headache. Confusing, yes, definitely. Imagine if you've got problems, okay. One thing is, again, one part at a time, slowly. Don't rush through the book. Don't rush through the book. First, the dialogue. Play with the dialogue. Make them understand the dialogue. Make them listen to the dialogue. Make them questions about the dialogue. Make them act out the principal parts expressively. Not I am wearing. Make them say things in the right way. Once you have done this, use the blackboard. and one thing at a time. That is, first the present continuous and then the present simple. But first the present continuous. What is he doing? What is he wearing? Where is he skiing? You make them questions. You write one or two examples on the board. You get away from that context. Remember that there is like a balloon. You start from the context in the book. You get out of that context, showing another context, like another picture. Look at another picture. What is he wearing? What are they wearing? Where are they playing football? And then you go back to the original context. In, out, back, in. Once you have done this, you may play games to revise the present continuous. You write one or two examples. Then you go to the present simple. Again, starting from this context, away from this context, back to this context. You play some game to revise or to teach the present simple. You write an example on the board. And only after that, when they can see the examples, when they can read the 2 or 3 or 4 examples, 2 with present continuous and 2 with present simple, they can read them aloud. After that, they go to the chart. Reading a chart, act with feelings, says Gustavo. Very good, yes. After that, they can go to the chart. Reading a chart is no easy task. It's difficult to interpret. And grammar has got different parts. Grammar is form and it's also meaning. So this is really complicated. Here, more than anywhere else, part by part. Start from the context, then get away. Play games so that they remember. And remember that when you play games, again, you have to consider your organization accommodations. Remember that if you've got autistic children or Asperger children, noise may become a barrier. So remember that when you plan the kind of game, you can make it more or less kinesthetic, more or less physical, more or less noisy. Consider your students. And then, yes, go to the chart. And then, yes, go to the workbook, okay? But one thing at a time and respecting their needs, please, all right? Because if not, you will only get frustrated children. And honestly, we also get frustrated when we see that they cannot learn. We pretend that we don't, but we do get frustrated. So eventually we come to writing, and I wanted to include secondary. I wanted to include higher levels as well, because what I'm saying for primary works for everybody. And we eventually come from writing, and this is a B1 class level. So students are not cured. If you have a dyslexic child, you're going to have a dyslexic first certificate candidate. It's the truth. So let's get ready for that. And this is the kind of activity you get. Can they do it? Yes, they can. It will take longer. It will take a lot of more effort. It will take different strategies, but more or less what we have seen. For example, part by part, bigger photocopies, cutting out, segmenting things, and using highlighters to underline main parts. Like, for example, read Sarah's advert below. What things does she want to know? Does she want to know about if you are interested in renting the room? So, we are looking for a sociable and well-organized person to rent a room in our house. It's on Staverton Road in the city center. It costs blah, 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 blah. If you are interested, email Sarah with the following information. Your age. So they have to underline this last part, because that is what they have to write. Your age, your job, your likes and dislikes, what type of person you are. And this part, what type of person you are, goes back to sociable and well organized. We have to work on this orally. We have to teach them to select. Selecting has to do with organizing. So they will have to answer what type of person they are, saying that they are sociable and why, they are organized and how. And then let me change the slide. Yes, we read a sample. Again, Reading is a challenge. Reading with mistakes is a greater challenge. Correcting the mistake is very difficult. So, Marce, don't worry. Thank you so much. I'll keep in touch with you. A pleasure. So, Marcela has to leave. This is why I'm saying goodbye to her. So, if I were you, what I would do to help them organize is to number the lines. 1 is I'm emailing about your advert. 2, I'm interested in renting it, and so on. So that when you correct, again, you use the blackboard, because these children get lost if you do it just orally. So you give them time. They may work in pairs. You choose the person who's going to help them, and you write the answers on the board. So when you write, I'm emailing about your advert for the room. I'm interested with renting it. And when you correct, for example, line number 2, interested with, you would write 2. With, and you cross it out or you circle it, showing that that's a mistake. And next to it, you would write in, showing it's the right option. Your handwriting ought to be clear. The blackboard ought to look clean and tidy. And eventually, they are going to write. Okay? If possible, try to monitor their work. Right? Writing should not be boring, definitely. Unfortunately, most of the first certificate tasks, or in general, the exam tasks are boring. You make it less boring through rhythm, okay? And rhythm has to do with this question of correcting orally on the board and all that. So, to sum up, because time is flying away, when we adapt, not when we modify, when we accommodate, when we write accommodations, when we prepare accommodations for our students, remember that we have to think in terms of our presentation stage, our practice stage, and also we have to think in terms of assessment. Assessment is the $1 million question. These children should be given more time, should be given bigger photocopies, that the activities should be 1 on each sheet of paper. We give them 1 sheet of paper at a time. We try to correct orally, okay? So, but you cannot, we should not assess in this way if you have not presented and practiced in this way. It's all the stages in the same way. Assessment would just be a consequence, okay? In the same way as if you practice presenting and practicing in one way, then the assessment is the same as all the others. No, impossible. If you know they've got difficulties, then your assessment should cater for those difficulties. How? All the stages, presentation, practice, and assessment, in terms of clarity, clarity in terms of colors, clarity in terms of the quality of the photocopy, clarity in terms of the font and the size. Also, in terms of the amount of information, avoid a lot of things on the page. Remember that color is also information. Sometimes you look at a book, at an exercise in the book and say, it's only got 2 words. Yes, but it's got 20 pictures, okay? Color also represents information and maybe too much. Remember the magic rule, 1 at a time, step by step. Segmentation is essential. Time. Not everybody has got the same timing. And remember that we must allow children time to think, time to visualize, time to practice reading silently. Give them time. And we must be ready to include technology. Technology, for example, to write answers in tests. Technology in the case of the smartphone to get pictures. If possible, I know it's difficult, but try to organize yourselves to allow the children to bring the smartphone or whatever to class. And finally, what I was talking about before, remember that I told you that was a slide that showed a revision with a lot of small squares where they had to write letters to make up a word. Okay. This is the reason why I told you that was confusing and impossible. When we learn to read and write, we have two possible ways to access reading and writing, two different ways. They should coexist, but very often one fails. One is the phonological way, or indirect. The other one is the visual way, or direct. Phonological has to do with the saying. Phonological has to do with the pronunciation of the word. The visual part, or the visual way, is how letters are put together to make up a word, and where a word finishes and another one begins. When we have dyslexic children, most of the times they have problems at the phonological level. They have problems in their phonological access. This is why we have to work all the time at these two levels. All the time you have to practice in class and for homework and involve the family explaining this. For example, identifying words in a chain. You will be surprised to see how many children just cannot realize, they don't realize where a word finishes. Or separating into syllables. Sometimes they are 10 years old and you ask them, how many syllables are there in table? Even in Spanish, in their mother tongue, they will fail to do it because they've got problems at a phonological level. How is this changed? Hard work, but regularly, constantly. Picture dictionaries are important, giving them letters to form words that they have seen all the time. And if you put all these strategies regularly into practice, in the first 5 minutes of the lesson, in the last 5 minutes of the lesson, you will see how gradually they do learn. At a more visual level, when you work with cards, make them associate the card with a picture with another card with a corresponding word. When they see pictures, make them label those pictures. Andrea says, I usually use the mobile letters to make them practice new vocabulary. Very good. That's excellent. Okay. And also rebus. The rebus is that kind of text where you replace some words with pictures, like today is Wednesday, it is a picture of a sun day. And so they have to replace sun by sunny. Okay. In this way, they are associating a picture with the meaning and the written word. This is not easy at all. But the key is organization on our part, being aware that there are many things that we can do and very often we don't do, and being aware of the fact that we need to put all this into practice all the time, throughout the unit, throughout the teaching process. Okay? Basically, I think that this summarizes what I wanted to transmit to you today. A child with special needs requires love, guidance, encouragement, positive influence, and a life teacher, just like all other children. They are special because their needs are special, but they are children, they are students, they are there to learn the same as all the others, and we also have special needs. So I'm sure that you can work in a better way, you can pay more attention to more children, you can cater for more needs. I think that that is what an educator needs to do. If you want to read more, remember that you can go to macmillan.com.r/zen. We are going to continue uploading material there. We are about to launch a new series that is going to have accommodations for teachers for primary school. And here you've got my personal email address, my WhatsApp number, my Facebook account. You can always contact me if you have questions, queries, or problems where you feel I can help you. Remember that your certificates are available. They will get to you through via email, and this presentation will be uploaded, so you may watch it again or share it with your colleagues, your partners. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you have learned a little, at least something, okay? If you have learned something, then this has been worthwhile. All the best, and thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. The presentations, okay, will be uploaded, all right? Yes, thank you so much. A pleasure to everybody. Bye-bye.